We all know the pop culture image of the punk rock band. It's a scene of effortless cool, packed sweaty basements, and raw musical genius aimed at sticking it to the man. This seductive myth has driven millions of teenagers to buy cheap guitars, gather in suburban garages, and attempt to form their own bands. But reality rarely matches the poster. The comic The Valkyries Demotape by Dan David serves as a sharp reality check to this entire mythos. Dan David ignores the musicians who land record deals. His story focuses entirely on the absolute bottom rung of the DIY music scene. The comedy is driven by a massive gap. It pits how incredibly seriously these characters take themselves against how mundane their lives actually are. To understand grassroots art, we have to strip away the illusion of the cool musician and examine the chaotic, embarrassing, and physically painful truth of trying to keep a band together. Successful bands are often romanticized as curated, ideologically unified collectives. At the local level, a band is usually just a collision of accidents. Take Maria, the bassist and vocalist. She's a working-class rebel who joined the band to cope with a mental breakdown caused by a soul-crushing minimum-wage job. Then there's Rosie on drums. She's an art student whose entire motivation for starting a band stems from being mesmerized by a local punk documentary she watched in class. And finally, Karen on guitar. She's a classical honor student from a prestigious university, essentially playing in a punk band just to challenge her own technical skills. When they hold their instruments, they attempt to project a unified, aggressive front, but underneath, their backgrounds and motivations conflict entirely. This accidental mismatch of personalities is the foundation of DIY music. It relies on a functional dysfunction born of pure necessity. The comic centers on situational irony, specifically how the band's self-imposed hardcore image folds under the weight of basic adulthood. Look at Maria. She's sitting at a diner screaming anti-establishment slogans like "No gods, no masters" at the top of her lungs. But that hardcore facade instantly shatters. A barrage of missed calls from her mother replaces her punk rebellion with sheer mundane terror. Lacking a shared musical vocabulary halts their creative process. Maria tries to explain a song structure by calling it a 2-4-4 chord thingy. Karen asks what musical key they're in. Maria stares back, completely baffled. A guitar one? I don't fucking know. Even when Maria claims her songs are like her own children, Karen is quick to remind her that she constantly forgets how to actually play them. In the world of the Valkyries, the most authentic moments are born from this exact type of mundane failure. The ultimate rock star fantasy is the live performance. The comic takes this specific expectation and presents it as a series of humiliations. You see the band playing a high-energy, sweat-drenched set. They are completely absorbed in the intensity of their own performance. Then the perspective shifts. They are playing to a completely empty room because they lost track of time and the crowd already left. Their attempts at rebellious behavior constantly backfire. At one gig, Maria brags about sneaking in through the back door, only for Karen to point out the show was entirely free to enter anyway. The financial reality of these gigs is bleak. Expecting a paycheck for their set, they instead receive a $1 coupon for a pizzeria that closed a decade ago. The touring lifestyle offers no groupies or wild parties. Instead, the real challenge is facing the terrifying, unsanitary reality of dive bar bathrooms. A typical tour at this level is a gauntlet of logistical hurdles and constant financial humiliation. There is one final rock myth to address: the destructive, purely cathartic act of shattering an instrument on stage. Maria executes this ultimate punk move, obliterating a bass guitar in a massive burst of chaotic energy. But the triumph comes with a catch. She admits the instrument wasn't actually hers, leaving them to deal with the real-world consequences of destroying Karen's borrowed gear. If there is no money, no fame, no glory, and only broken borrowed gear, why do they stay in the band? Rosie provides a raw answer. She gets an intense, physical catharsis from playing the drums, fueled entirely by imagining the snare as the faces of the high school bullies who made her life miserable. Dan David's comic strips away the rockstar mythology to show what remains: 3 mismatched people who, despite the empty rooms and the useless coupons, still choose to get in the van. The story finds its humor and its heart not in success, but in the stubborn, messy persistence of doing it anyway.